coming to you today from Brisbane, Australia. I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to host again Michele DeStefano. We're going to be chatting about who will you be in 2026, the reinvention imperative for lawyers. Sounds absolutely fantastic, doesn't it? Michele has just an amazing background in all of the things that we're going to be talking about related to that today. But I've asked her if she wouldn't mind just kicking us off with giving us a little bit of a background about herself so that you all know who she is. I know that many of you already do, and if you don't, you'll want to know her by the end of this session, I'm absolutely sure. So, Michele, tell us a bit about you.
Thanks, Terry. And I'm so glad you asked me back because you always make me feel so good. So it's like no way I would say no. I mean, with an introduction like that, how could I say no to an hour of talking with folks that care about change in the legal profession? So thanks for all of you coming and taking the time. I have kind of an unusual background for being a lawyer. I spent almost 8 years in advertising and marketing after I went to college and before I went to law school. So I worked at Leo Burnett for about 3 to 4 years, and I worked on some really healthy products like Kellogg's Pop Tarts, Apple Jacks, Frosted Flakes, and Philip Morris. Shh. Okay. Not that I have a problem with that. And then I decided to go client side and work at Levi Strauss and Company as a marketing manager. And so I did that for about 4 years. And then eventually I decided to join the legal world, a world of principles and ethics as opposed to cereal and jeans. And I went to Harvard Law School, kind of knowing I wanted to be a professor. I had toyed with getting my PhD in English, even applied, got into the master's program at Chicago, and decided that I wanted to be able to eat. So I didn't pursue my PhD in English Lit. That said, I never got over the idea of wanting to be a professor. Some people say, like, well, I don't get it. Why would you go from marketing to law? And I think they're really similar. And I think in 2026 and beyond, they're going to be even more similar. As a marketer, your job is to understand your customer, as a lawyer, to understand your client and really get to know them, empathize with their pain points, know everything about them. I know that sounds crazy, but when we were developing wide leg jeans for the masses in the 90s, we would follow groups of teens around. We would visit their closets. We'd give them video cameras to diary their lives so we could really understand what motivated them for in their lives, not only how they dressed, but their own personal brand, so that our product that we were developing would match their needs, but also the way we positioned it in our advertising. And lawyers, our job is to do that too. I think we sometimes forget that, but our job really is to understand our clients and their pain points and their business, and then meet them where they are, the way they want to be met, as opposed to the way that we might want to give advice. So after law school, I joined the Harvard Law School Exec Ed and Center on the Legal Profession and worked with David Wilkins to help set that up, and Ashish Nanda. And I also got to combine my two worlds because I was trained in qualitative interviews and focus groups. And so I did that with him before I eventually went on the law market. Now I'm a professor who studies legal professionals. And that's everybody from the actual practicing attorneys in-house or at the firms to people that are now running they call it back house, but it maybe should be called the front of house, marketing, operations, etc. And the way I keep up on what's happening is interviewing people all over the world. And that's really what I do, hundreds of interviews. And maybe later I'll tell you what project I'm working on right now, or likely will come up, but I've spoken enough now about myself. I'm turning it back to you, Terry.
Yeah, thanks, Michele. Firstly, I want to say anyone who spends a lot of time in teenagers' closets, to my mind, is definitely worthy of another award. So congratulations on that. That's amazing. I wanted to start really digging in a little bit to that client piece. I mean, you have done just an amazing amount of research in that. And I guess when we sit here in 2026, so much has changed. There's things that are similar, but so much has changed. And so I'm wondering, as you think back on all of those interviews and the work that you do, what's changed most fundamentally, do you think, in client expectations, as I say, as we sit here today in 2026?
Well, I think the two calls from clients right now are innovation and client centricity. And
Mm,
really, it's a focus on how we do things versus what we do, and as well on providing client centric service, which is a focus on the experience as opposed to on the actual advice. And that's really going to be a big point of difference going forward now that AI is leveling the playing field. Is it
mm.
replacing us? No. Is it making that guy or gal in your law school class that got a B minus a little bit better at what they do? Maybe. It's a great tool. And more, who we are and how we behave and how we treat our clients is going to, I think, matter. So it's interesting because through Law Without Walls, I have the pleasure of working with like 35 law schools around the world. And although, of course, cultures are so different, the way we teach law school is really not that different. The skills
Mm.
we focus on, thinking like a lawyer, doing independent work, complex problem solving and analysis, all those things make us great at lawyering. But the focus, like Law Without Walls, is on leadership, adaptive leadership, so empathy, humility, audacity, self-awareness, listening, communicating, presenting, those types of skills we don't focus on in law school as much, and I think they're the most important ones now today.
Yeah.
And also, the older we get, the rustier we get at that stuff.
Yeah. Has that changed kind of in practice and staying this with this idea of what clients want? I always think that we used to be knowledge gatekeepers in many respects, and a lot of what we did before AI was finding the knowledge, collating it, reviewing it, analyzing it, and interpreting it. But of course, as the technology has gotten better, and it still has a way to go, that burden, at least at a first draft basis, will be able to be done by AI. And then we've kind of flipped the switch, haven't we, to the reliance being really on expertise and experience and strategy and things like that. Are you seeing that kind of flip? And are you seeing a realization or something different that expertise now is or experience is critical? Knowledge is not enough. Maybe expertise is not enough as well. What are you seeing around those sort of themes?
Well, I definitely agree with you that if you're a senior associate or higher, you're feeling pretty lucky right now
Yeah,
because you already have that experience under your belt, the things you've done, the cases you've worked on, the deals you've worked on. A lot of the stuff that now AI does do that first and second year and third year associates used to do, really hard to use the tool if you don't have the expertise and experience to know when it's hallucinating or to make the call, really to leverage it for its benefits. So expertise and experience is going to be lauded, I think, as these tools get used more because that means the person's going to be not just more efficient, but better because you have
yeah.
the expertise and experience, and then you have AI. I like to think of AI. I don't know. We've got people from all over the world. How many of you, maybe if you put in the chat with a +1, have seen Sesame Street? I know that seems silly to ask, but let me see in the chat. Hold on. How many people? Okay, Dave has. Anybody else? Okay. And maybe put a 0 if you don't, because Sesame Street even exists in Germany, right? It did. So it does exist all around the world, but there's different
Mm.
characters. And in the US, we had a character called Snuffleupagus. Give me a give me a Y for yes if you remember Snuffleupagus. Because you have to be probably over, no offense, but over 40. Now you've all admitted you're over 40. Sorry, just kidding. All right. So Snuffleupagus was this like secret friend of Big Bird's, and he helped Big Bird a lot, like a lot, like get over some things. He talked to him, he gave him courage, but he would always disappear when he would try to introduce him to somebody. It was like his secret friend, but support. And that's what I think AI is. I think we should just think of it as this is just another tool in our toolbox to help us be better. So yeah, I agree with you on expertise. That said, I'm doing a project right now where I'm interviewing senior in-house folks about the pitching for new business process and how AI might make how people pitch even more important than it was before. Because expertise is in other ways not as important if you have tools that can help give you knowledge, help you predict. So how you pitch matters. And frankly, law firms have been pitching the same way for decades, and the complaints are really similar across countries that I've found so far. And I've only done like 20 interviews, but it seems pretty like a staid process that's open to disruption.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that more and more in my part of the world that it's a question, not just expected in pitches, but it's a question in RFPs, etc. And those questions around AI and the use of AI are becoming much more sophisticated, much more directed, if you like, almost much more complicated. And if you can't answer them or you don't answer them as well as other people that you're competing against, it makes a difference as to whether or not folks are going to be able to engage you. But
Although
as
I
we,
would say, I
yeah,
think that the requests for information are going to get shorter because of
yeah,
AI.
yes,
And already I know, shh, don't tell people, but a lot of in-house don't read the responses. It's more about your pitch. Um, and probably even more now, they're just going to use AI to read your responses. So, yeah, I wonder if we should do away with that written part.
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of law firm lawyers would love that.
It makes sense because it's really testing whether or not what you've written you actually know and
Yeah.
can explain and can apply. Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I was thinking about the pictures, but also thinking about how work has changed and client expectations have changed, and that we are now increasingly looking at legal services delivered in a multi-disciplinary environment. And I'm wondering what you're seeing there. Are the expectations that people will have access to a whole bunch of disciplines available to be able to deliver services, to deliver them differently? Do you think that's kind of fair? And I guess the other part of that is, do lawyers get that in the research that you're doing and understand that it is a team effort of which they are one expert?
I think we're moving to teaming and multidisciplinary teams and things done in sprints. Being in the boat with our clients, showing up without the answers, and being willing to participate in group exploration and problem finding, not just problem solving. And I think that clients are demanding that. I think the business is demanding that of internal in-house client legal departments. And whenever business does that to in-house legal, then in-house legal, it just like funnels down to law firms that they're going to include their law firms in that if they can afford to, right? Depends on
Mm,
it. And I would say that the law firm lawyers that understand that and get it and are willing to be in the boat with their client, but maybe not always charge for some of that work, are the ones that are going to keep getting the other work. Um,
mm.
because we are in a world where I most lawyers are involved in some type of pilot, if you will, related to AI or technology or digital transformation of some kind.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to pick up on that. It is having a pilot or approaching it as a pilot a problem with the profession in 2026 looking at AI. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that is that it seems to me that we have an opportunity, some would argue an obligation, to really be looking at systemic change. And we have kind of tended to, as an industry, I think, been much more comfortable with incremental change. Also, no change at all has been, another aspect of that. But I guess part of that incremental change has been having a pilot, then another pilot and whatever, versus perhaps the more strategic visioning that maybe this massive kind of change that's upon us from AI is presenting. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because I imagine that's come up in discussions that you've had as well. How are we thinking about this in a bigger picture way versus let's get the next project and pile it up and see how we go?
So it's interesting because on both sides of the fence here.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, I'm a big believer in pilots. The word pilot itself is the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down because lawyers are, yeah, they're scared of failure. So, when you call something a pilot, it lowers the stakes. Okay. So, I think pilots are smart. The other reason why I really love pilots and believe in them is for some reason, the law world and the business world thinks you should be on committees for like a year. And they think projects should be over 6 months, and they really shouldn't. I just
Yeah.
point to this. All over the world, schools, no matter where they are, whether it's Lithuania, South Africa, Alaska, Germany, United States, you know what? Their semesters are 3 to 4 months long. How did that just randomly happen? And I think at 4 months, if it you need to check in and decide, do we pivot? Do we kill it? Or do we proceed? And
Mm.
that's where the strategy comes in that you really that we often lack with pilots, which is why we go from pilot to pilot because we're not diligent enough in even the pilot process. Now I'm going to talk against myself. Okay, I'm going to contradict myself. That said, a bunch of pilots without a strategic vision and like understanding of what you're trying to where you're trying to get can only do so much for you for so long. I think you've got about a year. I think all firms should be doing pilots. I think there should be another group thinking about how do all the pilots come together and what are we trying to get here. So I was talking to a very senior in-house person at an insurance company in one of my interviews, and she was talking about this very problem. She's made so much success with groups
Mm.
and certain projects, and she's able to now say, look over here, this worked. Let's roll it over to this product that we're offering, or this, or the litigation team now from the other team. And so she's doing that. But where's the there, right? So one of her goals is to figure out how do we do all the things we're doing in a consistent way, taking into account our risk profile. Because when you have all these pilots and you're doing all these different things, if people aren't all on the same page about these other goals of the company, risk appetite, then you've got some major differences that could cause issues, if not inconsistencies. So I think that has to start being thought about as well. So I guess I'd say both. I think though right now, if you're at a law firm or an in-house legal department and you're not piloting something, you're behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, does that situation, if you're doing pilots and you're not kind of aligning them or aggregating them, is that something that in a law firm can be even more of an issue because we do have a love of silos. So, I'm just wondering whether that could be slightly exacerbated in our industry as well.
Absolutely. I think the ones that are doing it right are hiring and appointing people that are overseeing this that aren't necessarily that they're going to work side by side with someone maybe that's in charge of technology, but some people that are ahead of innovation, the heads of innovation, but who understand how lawyers work so that they're creating whatever they're creating so that it's accessible to everybody, even though it's a pilot, that eventually it would be accessible to everybody and usable by everybody, although each silo will adopt it at a different pace.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. The jury's out for me on all this press about law firm partners being made heads of innovation.
Yeah.
And, I've written about this like 10 years ago when we first started having chief innovation officers. I've got a couple articles on that. And the real key is, are they compensated for it? Are they incentivized for it? Do they have the expertise? It can't just be a pet project by a really smart partner that's actually a litigator and they're going to drop it every time they are in court. That doesn't work. It can't be a pet project, even if they're really good at it. And it has to have the person has to have power, persuasion. They have to have both types of authority too, informal authority and formal authority, because formal authority doesn't mean much at a firm sometimes. And informal authority, convincing people and having that kind of sway does. And so I think the jury's out on how that works. There are some partners that I've met that are heading up their innovation committees, but eventually they're going to have to choose. Like that's too big of a job. You can't also be doing M&A deal agreements that are 3 days and 24 hours. You know how those things sometimes go, and be the head of innovation and all these projects. It's too much.
Does it also take us back to that issue of multidisciplinary teams and I guess multidisciplinary talent and specialisms as well? Because I want to dig into innovation a little bit more in a second, but there's genuine skills around innovation and change management and transformation that may or may not necessarily attach to the role of lawyer. And I wonder, and also there's our structure, obviously, within law firms where very traditional law firms, partners would have to be the lead on everything, no matter what the function or discipline within the firm. Is that still something, just going to what you were saying, is it still something we need to break through? Because do you actually need a law degree to be able to do innovation, change management, and transformation and lead it? And be the person in charge of it successfully in a law firm.
So I think yes, because you want the informal authority and you won't have it if you don't have a law degree and some experience in the law marketplace. Now, I bet some people in this room don't have law degrees and work their way in law firms. And now you really do understand what it means to think like a lawyer and understand how lawyers work. But your first couple of years there, you probably didn't at the firm. So I think it's hard. And what I always say is I think that the business professionals at the firms are going to be what makes or breaks firms in the future because you need this talent. I'm a big believer in stone soup. You need different people's perspectives to solve problems the best. It's been proven. I mean, this is not me. This is just proven by research.
Mm.
That said, lawyers have a mistrust for people that don't have law degrees. And that's not just their fault. There's been a lot of business professionals that have come through law firms and made it clear that they don't understand how lawyers work. And so I think it's a two-way street here. Like the marketing folks, BD folks, operations or innovation people have to actually be dedicated to really learning the business and how lawyers think and how they work if they want to convince. And then the lawyers have to have an open mind about people who may have a different type of background than them. It's a
Mm.
combination.
Yeah, it's a team. It's a team
It's a
sport, I
team.
guess. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
often, so I've led innovation at various law firms with their committees and had like 9 or 10 teams. I've done it in house too. I did a program at Microsoft for 5 years. And it's amazing. The teams are always multidisciplinary because I make them, but that it's not equal treatment. And at the end, when it's time to put the presentations together, often it's just left to the marketing folks to do the slides. And that is not how it's supposed to be. Um, so yeah, it's one, I try to, I'm like a vampire. I try to change lawyers one at a time, turn them slow
How,
going.
how do we break through that though? Because if we push through, I guess, what's being called innovation theatre, lots of window dressing around innovation to the genuine need to transform. I think we're there now within the industry, well and truly. How do we break through those sort of mindsets, that sort of culture that has a whole bunch of different elements to it, whether it's opportunities for career advancement for people who are not lawyers. And I'm deliberately not using the term non-lawyer. One just I hate personally. But I wonder how do we or where do we or what is the turning point so that we can genuinely start to transform because we'll have to. Our clients are. We're not going to have the opportunity to stay, not that we ever should have, in the status quo. And I know that you've spoken to a lot of firms. I know from your background you've addressed this. What are those factors that help us push through to embrace what's coming, what's here?
Part of it is the leadership team. I mean, they really set the tone. And I think the incentive structure, no,
Mm.
most haven't really focused on that. We've been talking about collaboration and innovation for a really long time, but only a few firms, a handful of firms that I know about, actually reward it. And that that is if multidisciplinary collaboration is not rewarded and we stick with the billable hour, it's going to be really hard to get that change. And the thing is that you need the lawyers on the team too. You need everybody, right? You need that full multidisciplinary view. And every hour a lawyer is on that team is an hour that they could have built.
Yeah, agreed. It's a huge problem. Folks, I just want to mention at this point as well, if you'd like to pose a question, please throw it into the chat. More than happy to pick questions up from there if you'd like to. So if something's bubbling at the moment and you'd like to ask it, please do put it in the chat and we'll be sure to pick it up. Michelle, you spoke
I
about
just looked at the
leadership.
chat. Yeah. If you've been on a committee for longer than a year and there's more than 8 people on it, leave. You're not needed. Trust me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you spoke about leadership and kind of, I guess, more traditional leadership models. What do you see as how you would describe, or if you like, the hallmarks of old leadership versus how you would describe and what the hallmarks need to be in 2026 for leaders?
Well, in my book, I talk about this a lot, and there's a ton of experts on what's called adaptive leadership. And really, it's a fancy way of saying it's leaders who are faced with and willing to help lead through problems that are not technical problems where solutions already exist. So in 1950, lots of the problems that corporations and firms were facing were technical problems, meaning there was a solution. You could copy a different thing from a different, even discipline, bring it over here and use that to solve this problem. What we're facing right now is what the experts in the field call adaptive challenges, which mean there's no set solution already. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if value-based billing is going to actually get us money. We don't know if our clients are only going to use us after they've used the tool so we can check the tool. We don't know. We don't know. And we don't know, like, for example, COVID was definitely an adaptive challenge. We didn't have an understanding of how we were going to manage that. And even now, with everyone bringing people back to the office, and it's why people have struggled. Just saying 5 days a week is taking a technical solution to a challenge that's not actually technically one that can just be fixed by mandating everyone back in the office. If you want the people to stay, right, and be happy, which maybe is up for grabs now too. So I think that's where we are, that leadership has to be embrace more the idea that they're leading a group to together find the answer. They're not leading a group to the answer that's already out there. It's a little bit like in law school when you talked about the difference between formalism and realism, right? Formalism, the Scalia world, was the law is out there. It's waiting to be discovered and it's already there. And we're just plucking it out of the sky and saying what it is, but it already was there. Realism is, what that the that judges rule based on whether they're hungry or not. There's all these studies that they're more lenient after they've had a snack. So that's a realistic view of the law, or time does what time. I'm forgetting that great quote by Holmes, but I guess that's where I think we're at. What do you
How
think,
does it,
Terry?
well, I think I do think that leadership has changed quite significantly, but I'm not sure that we're necessarily supporting that change or looking for different factors, at least not as emphatically perhaps as the more traditional factors or hallmarks that we did in leaders. I think that it has to change. I think, as you say, it's a very different world and it's very difficult to manage and cope with that world as a leader unless you are yourself, looking at things very differently. The mindset shift one for me too is a really, really big one around leadership. And so, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I wonder, as you've been kind of chatting with the folks, the law firms in particular, I guess, are you seeing changes in the way that people are identifying leaders in firms And are you seeing them supporting the development of, the sort of variation of skills that we've both mentioned?
So, I think it was June, I was at the managing partner roundtable, which is about 12 managing partners, and about three or four new ones, which I went and talked to because I was like, why are you doing that? Who would want that job right now? Just given everything that's happening. And I mean, it varies how they're put into place, but a lot of times it really is. Like one guy said, there were seven of us and we all ran for it, and then it got down to two of us, and it was sort of like a vote. Um, so I don't think that's changed that much.
Mm.
I also not sure how much power managing partners really have, um, and that's problematic. I mean, if you think about some of the things that happened politically with some the firms that actually acquiesced and to Trump, and those that stood up against, those managing partners had really tough positions, and it wasn't like just their say. And I think we have to have a lot of empathy for them, because that was an adaptive challenge if you've ever seen one. You didn't know the right answer, and half of the people in this room say there is a right answer. Maybe the other half say there was no right answer. We can all agree it wasn't an easy answer, regardless of where you are on it. And I think a lot of those managing partners, when they were in the throes of that, realized I don't have the power I think I do. I don't really control this ship. And and that's good and that's bad, right? There's good things about that, because you don't necessarily want a hierarchical law firm where the leader gets to just make the decision. Then again, it makes it really hard for a firm to have a brand and a position and a sense of self if you don't have a captain. So I think of law schools. The dean is, sorry if there's any deans out there and they're going to watch this. Hopefully they won't, and hopefully my dean's not watching. And sorry, Patricia, if you are, but she's really not my boss. No offense. I listen to you. I do everything you ask. Okay, I do. I'm a yeser. But she's really not my boss, because I'm tenured, and that's similar, I think, to the managing partner role with all the partners. So it's interesting. It's not how companies are run. And of course, there's a lot of people saying that law firms should be run more like companies. And we're reading about like the law firms that are considering PE and how private equity would take over all the business side. Wow, that's going to be huge. Whatever impact it has, whether good or bad, it's going to be big if a firm not outsources, but lets a PE firm basically buy that piece of it and then sell it back to them, which is essentially what they're kind of proposing, at least in the US, because we don't have the open marketplace like some of the people in the room that are from the UK or other parts of the world.
Yeah. I want to lean into that though a little bit more. Just this, we've been talking a lot about the things that in a way need to change, and how our industry is changing, but maybe in pieces, not aligned or not as much as it should. In this title of this session, we talked about reinvention. There's been a lot of rewords, reimagining, revamping, rejigging,
Reworking.
reinvention, and I wonder, actually, at times I worry about whether how deep that needs to run, and whether we're going to be able to get there, not at all, but in time. Because, there's a lot happening in the marketplace with our clients and increasing number of competitors, that if we don't step up, if we don't do something, we're in trouble. And so I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts about that? Because I know this is something that you've thought, deeply about. Are we in a zone where we're almost paralyzed by the need to reinvent? Do we need to reinvent? I mean, how are we going to get from here to there? Because we know there's a there, and we know we've got to get there.
Right. Again, though, like reason we need adaptive leaders is we don't know where there is.
Yeah.
Like if we were in Apollo 13 and we have to, and the ship's going, the space shuttle's going down, you have to solve inside the box. You only can use the things you've got, and you know what the there is you're trying to get to, which is not crash. maybe that's how law firms are thinking about this right now. And that's not awful, right? Nobody wants to crash. Um, but we can't solve it all with what we've already got. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And not crashing isn't going to make you, lots of money or the winner in this. Um, I don't know. I struggle with the idea of reinvention. I also struggle. Look, AI is a tool and we should use it. Everybody should be using it personally and professionally to make yourselves more efficient and more effective, for sure. But that is not the potential of AI. That that is just the minimum. That's just the pie crust, right? What we want to use AI for is to build a new rocket ship. So where we started off, when we started this conversation talking about incremental change, and I've always been a big believer in that, like TNTs, tiny notice with James Batham, a good friend of mine at Denton's, TNT, like gunpowder, no, tiny noticeable things that add lasting value. We need to keep doing that for the rest of our lives. We got to be doing TNTs all the time. But now we also, I think, are being asked to build new rocket ships. We are being asked for innovation in the sense of real innovation. And AI has potential to help us. Like if you think about it as it's new inputs and new outputs and new relationships with clients. It's like, I'm not just going to do this one deal with you. I'm actually going to give me all your past deals, and I'm going to do this deal, and I'm going to give you a playbook for all your deals going forward, and I'm going to share all your data, and I'm going to keep it here, and we're going to partner. And now we're going to have this sticky relationship where we're really, the firm is really adding true value and like part of the in-house. Maybe that's where we're going, but I don't think we should just be using it to be more efficient. That said, I have a very good friend who works at a very reputable firm, and she's in real estate and she does deals, and she says things like, well, I love AI because I have too many clients. I can never get to enough clients. Now I could just get more clients. And I'm like, okay, that works for some, and that's what AI will do. But that's like a pie eating contest where the winner just gets more pie. And we have such an issue in our profession with alcoholism and depression and people being bored out of their skulls with the repetitive tasks. The goal would not be to do more of it. I would think the goal would be not to do that part of it, right? And to do something way better. But again, like you said, what's the way better? What's the there? I don't know. Anyone out there in the audience have that answer? Because if so, you should be selling it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, I know certainly in this country and I think in the States as well, when we think about all of the work that we want to do, however ill-advised or advised that may be in terms of AI, we're still only talking about 15% of the population that actually needs access to legal services because we've got 85% of the population that is not served. And so I wonder whether part of that is also thinking outside the box as to who we might offer legal services to and how we might extend that. Thoughts about that? And I guess I'm drawing a little bit on your Law Without Walls work there a little bit.
Well, so I years ago I wrote about the unauthorized practice of law, which we have in the US, and it's a way to keep people that don't have law degrees from providing legal services and legal advice. And the rocket lawyers and legal Zooms of the world have been sued.
Hmm.
That said, we got ChatGPT and Gemini, and you go on Google, you have access to Gemini, and it's free. And it actually, I saw this talk at the knowledge management conference. I've got to figure out, I got to name check this guy because he was amazing. And you might know who he is. And I know who he is, but sometimes when I'm presenting, I just get a freeze. And so I can't remember his name, but I will. And he gave this great talk about how we have all these tools now for citizens to go get legal aid by themselves. And I know that Gemini chat, they they hallucinate and give wrong answers, but it's better than what they do when they go pro se. Believe
Yeah.
me. And you can ask, how do you file this? If somebody does this to me, what do I have a lawsuit against them? That's the other thing. Like lots of people, the access part is also because they don't know they know they've been wrong, but they don't even know where to start with what it is, right? And there's actually a new startup called Learned Hands that Stanford's doing to try to combat that, so that the models know and will help people identify what is the legal issue that's the most important one that they could win on based on the series of facts. But I digress. I guess I think that access to justice is being opened up right now by those tools. And I don't think that people are going to sue chat for the unauthorized practice of law. And I mention this because it gives me hope that what this means is in 5 or 10 years, it's going to be so open that the legal clinics that are scared of an unauthorized practice of law suit, and the nonprofits that want to help, and actually someone can go and get services, that they'll start to be able to take those risks and do it anyway, because UPL will be dead. Now, there's probably like 80,000 law professors that would fight against me on this and say it's never going to happen, but I hope it does.
So if we look at all of those bits, or trying to kind of look at all of the bits that we've looked at today, I'm going to say the opportunity of greater access to justice through direct consumer access to tools, the changes in what clients are expecting, the changes in the structures of law firms. What is that world that we're sitting in, the legal industry, the legal ecosystem? What does that start to shape up to look like? The stakeholders, the major players, the distribution of work. It's a really big question, but
You got me on that
it's a
one,
really good
Terri. I have
question.
no idea. I
Are
mean,
there any bits coming out of your research though, where people are saying, I think this is how it's going to go? Or we don't know, but this looks to be where some of the pieces are going.
so Bjarne Tellman just finished writing a book where he makes all these predictions. And interestingly, Juan Luna, who I've known for years, reached out to me, and he's writing a book, and he's getting experts to make these predictions. I didn't have to. I said I didn't have time to contribute because the questions were like, every question was like that, Terri. I was like, I need to spend like 4 weeks on each question. I don't know how we can predict yet. I I believe that some firms are going to experiment with value-based billing, and that will open up a change in the business model. I believe some in-house are going to hire less because of what AI can do. I don't know.
Going to be mixed.
I really don't. And most people I talk to are in the stage that you mentioned earlier, which is pilots, and like, let's get our handle on what this is now. Like, if you think about law firms, what they're dealing with, which a lot of people don't have empathy for law firms, but I do, because they've got every client is giving them different sets and parameters around how they can use their data and use AI, and they have to keep track of that. And you've got associates. Look, I got 5 kids, 3 biological and 2 step, and they're all under 26, between the ages of 20 and 26. They don't have the same opinion about confidentiality and about using tech, and they just approach what they share and don't share really differently. And so you've got this whole group of associates coming in with a different set of values around that. And you've got all these different clients saying different things. And you've got AI out there. And how do you, like, for me, if I were running these things, if I was heads of innovation at these big firms or a manager, I'd be worried because I don't know how you keep track of it all. Now, I know there's probably an AI tool that someone's made to try to keep track of all that. But there's another part of me that, I unfortunately will admit this, but when I started working in the 90s, there was no web. I was on the World Wide Web Committee. And, when emails came out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, you can't email confidential information. My clients are telling me not to use email. And then eventually got past that, and then we would email and fax. Well, we got to do it double because email might not go through. And then just even 15 years ago, the cloud. We had clients saying, don't you put my stuff on the cloud, it's malpractice. Others were saying, if you don't put me in the cloud, it's malpractice. And I feel like that's where we are now with AI, and that in 10 years, it's going to have sorted itself out in terms of the issues of what can and can we do, and who can and can't. Like, I think some of that will go away. At least I hope, because it's a really confusing world we live in.
So let me ask it in a slightly different way.
I didn't answer the question. That was very
No, you
nice of
did.
you, the way to say, no,
You,
Michelle, try
you
again.
did. You did in all of this. What happens if we do nothing? What happens if there's so much going on that what we should do, and I'm by the way not suggesting this, but is just wait. Just wait.
Oh, I've talked to a couple firms that's what they're doing.
Okay.
And they want to do that because historically, that is how the law market works. A couple mover firms do something and it works or it doesn't, and everybody else waits. It's like life cereal. I'm not trying it. Let Mikey try it. I mean, I don't know if you remember that commercial, but they're going to wait and then they're going to do what's safe. I don't I'm not going to judge that. There are human beings that are doing that too.
Yeah.
Really successful business professionals that are on the other side of M&A deals and aren't using AI at all. And they're still making millions and millions of dollars. So I don't, that's for sure true. I know people like that. I mean, maybe they're using AI in their personal life to go shopping, but I don't think a wait and see. I'm not going to judge it. It's not how I would be. I'm not going to judge it right now because I bet for some firms it's in keeping with their business model, and their clients who are conservative don't want them to take risks. So they are going to be fine probably a year or two. I don't think they can do it for forever. And like I said, I already believe those that aren't already starting the pilots are behind. So they're going to have to play major catch up. But maybe I got to see the chat going. I got maybe some people to disagree with me. So maybe someone else can take the hot seat for a second.
Well, no, I think I mean one
Law
of
firms
the
love to be first, to be second.
yeah,
Yes, Joy. They
yeah.
like to be second. Yes.
And the opportunity cost of wait and see feels high. And I have to say I'm in that camp as well, because I think for as much as we comfort ourselves by looking to the left and the right, with our own peers and what they're doing, the black hole potentially looms below. And I think, we're clients, you look at what's happening in so many other industries, and it's just phenomenal, the pace of change and the extent to which it's being adopted. And I think they're also the folks that need legal advice. So if we're not able to understand or to be able to work at a comparable level, then where are we? Because there are competitors that can step in instead. So I hear what you say. I do hear what you say, and I do understand obviously the culture of law, but I worry if we have that luxury and if we're almost becoming, I guess complacent in a way if we don't do more. And so I guess I'm poking the bear a little bit with those thoughts and comments, Michelle, but would love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I guess I think some practice groups are more likely to be disrupted by AI than others.
Yeah, very fair.
So I think that if you're not using AI in M&A, it's not that big of a deal if you're not getting the due diligence list from AI first. Okay, so if you've been doing deals your whole
Yeah,
life and you're in
sure.
your 50s, you're probably doing a pretty good job. There's pieces of an M&A deal that AI could help you be more efficient at, but I don't know that right now that's like the place where the disruption will happen. If you're
Mm.
in commercial real estate and your job is to review leases, I'd be worried. Okay, you shouldn't just be sitting there and waiting. Um, there's other practice groups too. Litigation, I look you it there's some great tools. Wow. I mean, I was just taught at Harvard for the winter. I teach my legal profession ethics and innovation course there, and I have them all present on innovation. There's a ton of stuff for litigators now, from fake live 3D jury pools that you can test your closing statements on, 3D devices that actually show the scene from a witness's perspective. They recreate it. There's tools that help you with depositions that tell you that can quickly go to the right page and suggest what to ask and identify contradictions in the moment that just humans, you're not perfect. You leave the room, you're like, oh, I should ask this. So But is litigators going to be disruptive? They don't use those right now. I don't think so. But I think we could probably, if we went through and mined a law firm, we could pick out certain practice groups. Same with in-house legal. There's certain things that some in-house legal professionals, even if they're, I don't know whether they have law degrees or not, that are doing that's rote and routine that probably AI can do. So those people should not be sitting on their laurels. They should be developing the new products, adopting them, or looking for new jobs.
And I wonder, going back to what you were saying earlier about, the alignment and pilots and those sort of things, whether we're in danger of seeing this transformation only through the lens of AI tools. Because to me, yes, they are an enabler, they're a catalyst, but the impact is on other things like new risk portfolios. You spoke about changes to pricing conventions. Is it also important for us to be looking through not just the lens of the tool, but how that is impacting the industry more broadly? Because that's really where we start talking about transformation.
I think absolutely. I think that goes back to that question you asked earlier about pilot projects versus strategic vision. And I think someone needs to be thinking about those things and working through them and yeah, trying to envision a new world. Instead of thinking of it as reimagining, it's like starting from scratch.
Yeah,
So if you
yeah,
think of the movie The Founder, which is about McDonald's and how it used to be that you would drive up in your car and you would get service a certain way, and they wanted a new vision for what a fast food restaurant is. 30 seconds or less your burger, but you're eating off paper and you have to get up, and it made their customers mad. It wasn't client centric how they did it, but the way they were thinking of it was trying to reconstruct, like, so when you think about a kitchen, and Bjarne Tillman's the former deputy general counsel of Aramco, used to be GC of Pearson, GC of Haleon. He and I wrote an article about 4 or 5 years ago on digital transformation, and we analogize a legal department to a kitchen. So if you're only doing pilot projects to digitally transform, what happens is you just do things the way that you keep the stove where the stove already is, and you make it a better stove. And you keep the fridge where it is, but it's more efficient fridge. And when really what you should be doing is tearing it all out and going, no, actually, right, the way the kitchen was made, the stove wasn't next to the fridge, which means you were walking all the way across the room to get the milk out to boil it for the mac and cheese, which is inefficient. So it's approaching holistically how things should run in the whole department. And then, of course, not making the founder mistake. They didn't include the clients, including the clients in that before you actually go and build it out. And then they get pissed that you move the fridge because now it's harder for them to get their cold drink, right? So, this is all a analogy, obviously. So I think that we do need to be doing that, and I hope some law firms are doing that. And I hope some of the people that run operations and the chief operating officers at firms and the people that are in charge of all of the operational parts of the firm are doing that, because that's where you could save a lot of money. Even if you just say, okay, partners, just keep doing what you're doing. Use AI to make yourselves more efficient when you can, but don't use it so much that you can't bill your hours. But let's focus on this other area where it's just a cost center, because it is. Sorry, marketing, legal ops, tech, HR, and a lot of learning and development, they're cost centers, just like in-house legal departments are. So I hope some law firms are rethinking how to use AI to rethink how we even do that. Because a lot of those areas of law firms were incrementally added. Oh, we need a marketing department, so you got one person. Oh, we need a BD, and then suddenly, oh, then we need it was like piecemeal. Somebody didn't just start from scratch and develop every component that now exists that supports the lawyers.
yeah. I look at it. We could have another whole session on those amazing points, Michele, because I often wonder, are they cost centers, or are they now just essential skills of a multidisciplinary team to, deliver legal services? And I guess I kind of think of, we just have to chunk everything out now, right? And is that a human bit? Is that an AI bit? Is that a hybrid bit? And how do we kind of inject all the needs for safety and responsibility within that as well.
So I
But
agree, and I
frankly,
don't think you should think of them just as cost centers, but if you're
yeah,
reimagining, then you're reimagining that term.
that's
And
it. Yeah,
maybe we go to a world where, so if you think about in-house, what they did, originally they sat with the business. Then we saw this move where all the legal departments went separate and they could see everything that was happening, but not necessarily sit with the products or whatever. But now you're seeing, well, actually, some now are hot desking with the business again.
yeah,
Has anyone ever thought of that for a law firm? What if the marketing people sat with the lawyers and were
yeah.
assigned? And maybe some firms are doing that, but you might think of a whole different way to structure that group if you started over instead of reimagined what was there.
Yeah, absolutely. It is that reinvention, leaning into that
Reinvention.
reinvention. We sadly have to wrap in just a couple of minutes, and I want to hand back to Debbie as well, but I can't leave without asking you just one more question. I'm just going to squeeze in one more question.
No,
This-
somebody from the audience ask, please. Terry asks really difficult questions. Can somebody from the audience save me and ask me an easy one like, what's my favorite
It's easy.
color?
It's easy. It's an easy question, I promise. It's kind of for the folks that are here and those that will listen to this. 2026, new year, new resolutions. What can they do? Where do they start to think about all of the many, many amazing things that you've spoken about today?
Okay, so Carlos Valdez de Pena has this book called Lessons from Mars. It's a great book. And it's not like Mars, like the up there. It's like the candy bar company. And it's about leadership and culture change. And I highly recommend it. But what he says is that we're all born really, really selfish. And we work our whole lives to get over that. Like if you talk to a 3-year-old, all they care about is me. So my first answer is based on me being born really, really, really selfish. And I'd say, read my book. See that book back there? It's red, the red one, not the handbook, because that's only if you want to lead innovation. If you want to lead an innovation team, read the handbook. Okay, so that was very self-serving. And I'll do another one. Join Law Without Walls. Join any sprint, hackathon, opportunity for you to practice innovating. Doesn't
Mm,
have to be Law Without Walls. Go get real practical experience on a multidisciplinary team doing something that scares you to death. And you only have 48 hours to finish and then you're getting on stage. Go
mm.
challenge yourself. Learn a new design thinking method. And the last thing I'd say is start reading all about innovation and design thinking. Know what the DNA, read Clayton Christensen's The 5 DNA. I have a recommended book list. I'm happy to share it with anybody if you want to reach out to me. I think we need to be looking outside the law in order to change the law. So that would be my number one recommendation that is not as self-motivated.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Michelle, every single time I get to have a conversation with you, I not only learn stuff, but it's just an absolute pleasure. Can I
Thank you.
say thank you very much for making that the situation yet again? Really wonderful to see you. Wonderful to see so many faces that I recognize here as well. And as always, a great honour to be a fellow of the college. And on that note,